Hi everyone, I hope you are well rested for this one.
Today we are talking about the new blueprint for rest.
And some of the questions we want to explore are: what would change if we trusted rest instead of resisting it? What would it mean to rest without earning it?
When did rest become something we justify, optimize, or feel guilty about? And what happens when rest is treated as a reward instead of a requirement? Right, Catherine. So today we want to talk about rest because why not? I mean, we are millennials. Please, life, give us a rest.
Oh my God, so true. I had actually written in my notes here that we can learn so much from Gen Z because I feel like they are the generation that is pushing back against the hustle culture, the grind culture. The way we grew up, we were taught that the goal is productivity,
Yeah.
is ambition, is drive, is, achieving.
Totally
And I
agree.
feel like the shift that's happening now is that we're like, aren't we all just exhausted?
Yeah.
And actually, the new goal is regulation. And yeah, I think the question that we're all asking ourselves right now is, do things have to feel so hard and so tiring? And like, is it really worth it achieving all those things if it comes at the cost of us feeling regulated in our bodies?
Yeah, because we feel it not only like in our bodies, which is like physically, we are physically tired, but we feel it also like mentally. I feel like it's just too much of everything sometime. And I don't know, even when you actively say, okay, I have this time to rest, I feel like I have no clue like what I'm going to do. And then after this time has passed and I don't feel rested at all. So,
And I blame social media for that.
yeah.
And because I think that, I mean, not only social media, but I think that previously, before we had these devices, when we had downtime, that downtime was really just doing nothing or kind of intentionally engaging in restful activities like reading a book, going for a kind of gentle walk, maybe listening to some music. And now we kind of trick ourselves into feeling like, oh, I'm getting some rest, I'm taking some downtime, I'm on my couch, scrolling. But actually, that's not real rest. And you're kind of, you're keeping your nervous system sort of engaged and you're spending time in these spaces that are engineered for hyper emotional stimulation and
Yeah.
emotional response. And you're not actually carving out that intentional time where you can just sort of have this like exhale feeling and just feel like your body and your spirit just kind of letting go and relaxing.
Yeah, it's like all these things are keeping our attention. Our attention is constantly taken away from us. And maybe that's a way to realize it and take it back to ourselves.
We're in this state of hypervigilance
Yeah,
all
exactly.
the time. Yeah.
Exactly. And also like we are constantly, I don't know, yeah, it's like our attention is going everywhere all the time. We never have time to ground ourselves or to just like be in the present and really enjoy it, to have that moment of, as you say, just breathing and resting and
We're
feel
addicted.
that peace.
Exactly. I think we are completely addicted to being busy. The way that modern life has been set up, our calendars are jam packed. Our work days are kind of stuffed with as much productivity as we can get. We then, have to do all these things like keep ourselves fit. We need to exercise. There's this expectation that we are available for social activities all the time. So, our calendars are full. There's this kind of culture of FOMO and fear of
Yes, that's
missing
true.
out and,
That's
and
awful.
constantly having to stay up to date with the latest thing or
Yeah.
go and experience that thing or just be always on all the time. And God, like at some point, I think we just have to say like enough. Like,
Enough.
yeah. And in a lot of these conversations, when we talk about the blueprints, so often we find ourselves kind of revisiting childhood. And I feel like that's super relevant here as well, because again, if I think about some of my favorite memories of childhood and being a child, it was just those times when you're just doing nothing and you're kind of enjoying that feeling of being bored. I mean, we're not bored anymore.
Yeah, maybe being bored is also like assimilated to being not productive.
Yeah, lazy.
And lazy. Yeah.
And actually, in those moments, that is where you give your mind time to wander. Your imagination maybe comes alive. You also open up, the inspiration that can come internally from you and get in touch with your own thoughts, your own feelings, rather than, constantly taking this stimulation and this activation from all of these external places.
Yeah, that's what I was about actually to say. It's maybe we are or we became uncomfortable to being with our own thoughts and listening to them and be comfortable with them, analyzing them, and that's why also we always are looking for all this distraction, because once this happen, we don't know how to handle them. And that could be also a trigger why we never rest, because we are always looking for external,
We're running away from ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's worth revisiting what the current blueprint for rest says. I'm curious your view on this, because I think we come from different cultures and backgrounds. Maybe something that everyone can relate to is that, rest is associated with laziness. Often there's this feeling of rest is something that you should deserve, so like you need to work hard so that you've earned your rest. There's a little bit of guilt sometimes that can be associated with rest, as in, do I really deserve this? Have I worked hard enough to justify the fact that I'm taking some time off? There's this concept of switching off, which almost implies that you're putting a pause to life. But what if rest is not kind of seen as this state of passiveness or of being turned off, but actually rest is almost cultivating this intentional, open, free, relaxed time to allow things to grow, to allow new thoughts to form, to allow, you to just experience yourself.
If I don't work enough, well, I don't deserve that rest. And it's always that, hustle mentality that comes with it. And I think that's part of the general environment or society that we live in at the moment. And we need to get more comfortable into being okay to say stop.
I would say comfortable and even further like intentional and active around it. I think something that became a game changer for me this year, I set some goals for myself, and part of those goals were, I really want time to focus on myself, and I want to kind of carve out that time very intentionally. I used to have a kind of social calendar that was quite packed, so I found myself kind of working hard during the day, and then if I looked at the week ahead, I would see, okay, I'm going to have drinks with that friend on Monday, maybe I'm going to go climbing on Tuesday, maybe I'm going to go to this concert on Wednesday, maybe I'm going to go for dinner with that friend on Thursday, maybe there's a friend's birthday on Friday. And all of that was just exhausting me to the point that all of these things that were supposed to be time that I was enjoying with my friends, and I stopped enjoying those moments because it was all just too much and everything was just too packed and crowded. And so now I've kind of made this rule with myself that I'm going to only have one social occasion a week during the weeknight. And honestly, it's been so much better for it, because it means that maybe I don't see people as often, but when I do see them, I'm energized. I can bring my best self to the situation, and I really look forward to it rather than it just being another thing in my calendar that I dread.
Why do you think at that time you were trying like so hard to have like that social calendar so full?
I think it's something that just happens unintentionally, you almost don't think about it. And because you're not, protecting that time consciously, there's just part of our, living kind of a busy modern adult life that says, you've got to catch up with all these people, let's go for drinks. It's almost, I feel like it's not something intentional that happens. It's more like you just get like caught up in the cycle of all these plans, all these activities, the group chats. And don't get me wrong, I love seeing my friends. It's just, so those are the times I look forward to, but I really want to be able to do that in a way that feels like it's time well spent and I'm bringing my best to the situation.
Yeah, exactly. In a way, it rests to putting yourself first. And then once you do that, you are able to be fully present for the people you love or to do the activity that you love and to be a better person.
For me, I don't think it's necessarily a conscious thing that I'm overcommitting to all these plans. It's more just that if I don't intentionally manage that social calendar or just that life calendar, things just spiral out of control. You almost need to intentionally protect that time.
Yeah. And something else I wanted to add, maybe that's also another triggers to why we feel so guilty getting some rest, is that we have this notion of time passing by so fast that we might feel maybe sometimes that if we rest or if we don't do anything or if we take this time for ourselves, time will just pass by and then we're gonna lose it, and then that's it. You just not going to be able to catch up time and do something else with it. And that fear,
it kind of goes back to that FOMO, fear of missing out, which is all kind of based on this kind of hierarchy of what we view of valuable use of our time versus not a valuable use of our time.
Sure.
Yeah. A symptom of all this, and maybe linked to what we were saying before, is that people almost have forgotten how to rest. And rest is something that triggers anxiety instead of something that makes us feel relieved. Anyone who's experienced burnout maybe can relate to this. You're overworked, you've got so much going on, and then finally you carve out that time, or you manage to find that time where you can rest, and then you arrive at that time and you're like, now what? What do I do? It feels unnatural to us. It feels, as we said, like a waste of time. Eventually, the body keeps the score, as they say, and that will come back to bite you. So rather good to have kind of a regular ongoing practice of rest and understanding what that looks like for you, rather than you just not, completely unconsciously just like hurtling towards the burnout. It reminds me of this story that we saw when the Olympic Games was happening now. I don't know if you saw this figure skater from the States. Her name's Alyssa Liu. Did you see? She's the Gen Z skater with the
dyed hair.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So what's so cool about her story was she was this kind of champion figure skater. And at the age of 16, she was completely burnt out by, these hectic training programs and I guess all the intensity that goes along with being an Olympic athlete. And so she kind of stepped away and she made the call. I mean, she reached the point of burnout and she actually took 4 years off. I'm sure had all these critics, people saying you're crazy, you're walking away from a potentially Olympic career, what are you doing? 4 years later, she comes back and she wins the gold. She won the gold earlier, like a couple of months ago. And not only did she win the gold, but she did it with this ease and this joy. And her story became kind of this success story of what it looks like to actually prioritize yourself, step away when something is not working for you, go and rest, and then come back better than ever.
Yeah. It's a way to find yourself back in a way.
Yeah.
To get in touch with your own identity, who you truly are, what truly drives you. Because I've got the same. So I talk about my own experience, for instance, but I put myself in those situations where I was making myself tired. If it was not work, it was just like, okay, I'm going to plan this event. So all this going out on top of work. And if it was not that, it was just like always planning something until it became like too much for me. And I had to say stop to everything. So the same, I kind of like pull myself back.
Complete
break. And then there was no other solution than to being with myself and to listen to myself. And that's when I went to that whole consciousness journey, spiritual journey, where I started meditation, introspection, and that really opened something up into my heart and drove me to being the person that I am today and that I am more comfortable with. And also, I feel like more comfortable to be around with. I don't know. It's like if you
more
take
at
care of
home in
yourself,
yourself.
and then after it reflects on, everything that is around you and all the people also that you meet and you attract, So,
What it sounds like is for you, rest is really transformative.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful realization because, again, also in that case of of Alyssa Liu, like there's this narrative that rest time is not productive time, and that if you take a rest, you are setting yourself back, or you are, you're missing out on your potential to achieve. When actually, for so many people, the rest and the kind of active, conscious rest can actually be the thing that unlocks their greatest potential, or gives them, the perspective, the growth, the maturity to
Exactly.
kind of quantum leap and almost like reach that next level of who they could possibly be.
Yeah. And that's so funny because you say that, and that makes me think about this psychologist that I like, that I follow. It's like, that I follow. No, this is that anymore. But I mean,
R.I.P.
R.I.P. But I mean, like, that's a psychologist that I like the way he's thinking about that. It's like we have like two modes as a human in a way: the having mode and the being mode. Having mode being like our identity is based on possession and accumulation, and the being mode is our identity based on experience, growth, and presence, which is like everything that you talk about. And I think when you get rest and into the rest, realm, I would say that's what you need to do, like really get into experience things and get into being present in what you do. And I like his way to compare things, because that's really like either or. And either you are all for accumulation, I have a career, I have money,
the chasing.
I have knowledge, the chasing. And then when you stop that and you start the being, it's like stopping the chasing and being like more, okay, instead of consuming and accumulating, maybe I'm going to start to create. Instead of consuming again, I'm going to start to experience thing. And instead of knowledge, I'm just going to do the learning. It's like trying to have all this shift happening in a way. And I really find it interesting that either you act on the having mode or you act on the being mode.
Where I think it comes from is almost this kind of cultural programming, I suppose, that we have, especially a lot of us who've grown up in kind of Western thinking countries, where the goal of life seems to be, to achieve that success, to be ambitious, to accumulate that wealth, rather than the goal being, to just enjoy the time that we have here. I was so inspired when we traveled to Vietnam a little bit earlier this year. And honestly, the thing that stays with me the most from that entire trip, I mean, great food, great nature, gorgeous people, loved it. But the one thing that I just can't stop thinking about is how I read somewhere that it was like on a pamphlet or something for one of the shows we went to see there. And it spoke about how the national ambition for Vietnamese people is to live a peaceful and happy life.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, how powerful is that? Because most countries, when you think about the narrative of the culture, it's really like the goal of life is to build this vision of success, to achieve greatness, to leave a legacy. And actually,
all in appearance and nothing like really deeper.
Yeah.
And that's what's the most important. It's like peace with yourself, peace with peace of mind, peace of heart, as I always say. And that's beautiful that they put that forward. That's true.
And you can really feel it in all of the people, how they go about their day. They don't seem to kind of live with this feeling of intense stress. And that was quite inspiring because, again, I think so much of this is just assumed or inherited, that is the existing blueprint, that, life is about what are you going to achieve and what are you going to leave behind, and like what kind of material wealth do you have to show for yourself, when actually, maybe the marker of just like a great time on earth is that you were here, you enjoyed yourself, you were kind and loving and open to other people. I want to go back to what we were talking about with Gen Z and how we can learn a lot from them. I mean, there's stuff that they can learn from us too, I think. Like, please respect your elders. But what I'm learning from them is I like to kind of take a look at TikTok trends and what they can tell us about, where culture is at right now, or what is kind of the mood of the moment. And some of these TikTok trends that I find quite funny is, they talk a lot about soft life, and it's almost this kind of pushback against the hustle culture, the girl boss era, the grind, where they're sort of romanticizing this much kind of slower, more simple life, and really platforming that as like the dream of what a day well spent looks like. There was another trend which they call floor time, and floor time is really just you lying on the floor doing nothing. And that again reminds me of my teenage self in my teenage bedroom, and just that feeling of I have nowhere to be, I have nothing to do, I'm staring at the ceiling, or I'm staring at the posters on my wall, maybe I'm listening to some music, and I'm just being, and that feeling was unmatched, and I really think we need to bring that back,
Yeah, and I think we are drawn to that kind of mentality with the dolce far niente, vita lente. When we see that also on social media with these older people in Italy
now,
on their chair, like in the sun, close to the beach, just there on the chair and
that's
doing
luxury,
nothing.
Baby. Yeah.
That's the goal, and we are craving for that, and being able to be, okay, I'm just going to sit on a chair, not doing anything, listen to nature.
Watch life go by.
Observe
the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned Italy, dolce far niente, all of this. I've also been quite inspired anytime I visit one of these Mediterranean nations that love to nap, that have like a good siesta culture. I'm like, why don't we do that everywhere? Those people, I don't think it's a coincidence that people in those countries that actively take that big rest every day in the middle of the day, those people are happier,
Yeah.
Those people are more lively, more animated. When they're awake, they're really awake, and they're living life, at full volume, in full color. But they're really taking that very intentional long rest to break up the day. And I think that's the key.
That too. I think it will depend from one person to another. Even when we are kids, some like to take naps, some don't. But
did you like to nap?
No.
Oh, I was such a napper.
Oh yeah, no.
Still am.
I am actually, as an adult, I love to nap. But when I was a kid, no, I don't even know. No, too much to do already, like to play with, and but yeah, I like that too. But
oh my God,
there is
that feeling of like waking up from a nap, from like a 3-hour nap in the middle of the day, maybe in the sun.
Even as an adult,
never felt better. Yeah.
Oh no,
absolutely.
Feel more dizzy or
no. That's when I feel like I have that kind of bone deep rest.
Okay. Well, nap is an option then. But as we were saying before, maybe also rest is not doing anything.
Doing things intentionally and mindfully can also be a form of rest, rather than doing them from this lens of, oh, I'm rushing, I have to get dinner done, let me just do this thing, I think that's actually true. So you can almost take this active form of rest, where rest can look like doing something, but doing it for slowly, intentionally, and for the love of that thing. I also like this concept of, I think they call it slow walking or something, which is the idea of just taking a walk, but not with your phone, not with your headphones, not with a podcast, not with any stimulation, but actually just going for a walk, getting out there in the world, taking in the sights, listening to the birds, the traffic, whatever it is, and just kind of, again, being in the world.
Yeah, walk in nature is what resets me the most, actually. Just walking, not thinking, looking around, having that big burst of fresh air.
I think another component of rest that is super important is to think about it as a way to kind of come back into our bodies. And again, because we spend so much of our time in our heads, in conversation, on screens, we're living in our minds. And actually, even if you are doing something active with your body, it can still feel like a form of rest because you are kind of taking a break from that noise machine in your head, and you're doing something that just, like kind of quiets your mind, but keeps your energy flowing in your body. I love this idea of kind of somatic intelligence. Because we are so fatigued and exhausted and burnt out from the overstimulation of our minds and our attention and our brains, we are craving experiences that just pull us back down into our bodies, and that can feel very soothing, and that can really help to regulate our nervous system. And that's why, people are kind of craving these experiences, even though they don't necessarily look like rest, they are still almost in a way recalibrating your body and getting you back into your body. So things like cold plunges, saunas, anything like that is pulling you into that realm of physical sensation that then makes it easier for you to kind of escape your mind and turn off that mental voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does rest look like for you?
Well, it's something I want to get better at and more intentional with. I do feel like I feel like I don't carve out that time to just do nothing. I read about this concept of like doing nothing on purpose, and God, that just sounded so good. It sounded luxurious and aspirational and like something I just will never have time to do, and that's what I'm also trying to challenge myself on, is like I give myself rest with the scraps of time that I have after everything else, after work, after exercise, after cooking, after friends, after projects, all these things.
But at least you are aware of it.
Yeah, that's the first step.
Yeah, that's the first step. Then after you can act on it.
Yeah. What I notice for myself is the difference in my own mood and mentality. I'm just kind of trying to pay close attention to that because I will very, very quickly, I cannot deny the effects of when I'm not rested or when stress is too much. Like I become an agitated person, my mood is short. It's very, very clear to me. So I'm kind of trying to just pay attention to those signs now and be like, okay, girl, like time to press pause, take a step back. Like, let's just go breathe.
Me, it's funny. I had that not so long ago. It felt like my brain was so full and I couldn't get space from it. And I just was like, okay, what's wrong? And I could notice actually that even when I was doing that was not either related to work, but that was related to something I love to do, I was never putting my brain to rest. So even if I had to read a book at some point, because I had some time, I would read a book that would teach me something about a specific theme,
That pressure to be productive.
Yeah, exactly. But I was doing it without even being aware of it. So I had to but I was like physically feeling that my brain was so full and that I needed to, find a way to get oxygen. It's like my brain was missing oxygen. And I feel that was interesting because it forced me to take a step back and be like, okay, there is something here that's not right. What can I do to get out of that loop that I got myself into? And how can I structure my time? And we come back to that intention to be able to rest and engage into activities that are not either teaching me something or getting me to be performing or productive about something. And that was something that I really had to be like, oh, wow, I need to take a step back. If not, I'm going to get into that loop again where I'm going to burn out. I'm going to get like a bit disgusted of what I'm been doing,
If you don't take the time to integrate that knowledge and to metabolize that, we're sort of reacting to this hyperstimulation of all these solutions, what we need to do. But we're not taking the time to really kind of digest that and metabolize it into what that actually means for us and integrate that into something that we can really use.
Yeah.
So we're sort of stuck in this loop of kind of superficial stimulation, superficial knowledge entering our system, but we're not really doing anything with it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like accumulating
Yes.
until there is no space for more, but we are still trying, and then we just burst because there is no room.
Yeah, we don't take the time to really sit with an idea and think about, okay, is there something for me to learn here? How might I integrate this into my own life? How could I apply this for myself? Because we're sort of just quickly moving on to the next thing.
True. That's also a thing.
Yeah, you would almost be better off, reading one great book a month and really thinking through what does this mean for me? Like, does this spark anything for me? Can I get creative with this thing? Rather than trying to read those 10 books and hoard that knowledge, but then it doesn't actually go anywhere and you don't do anything with it. Okay, so Fred again, like the DJ. So he was promoting his new album and he was doing a series of gigs in different cities. And part of the gigs was that he had this very beautiful art installation, which was basically beautiful ambient lighting and very like flowing material and this kind of very soothing visual piece.
Okay.
He had this beautiful installation as part of his concert series. And then as a kind of special event or a special edition of the event in New York, they had that beautiful installation, but it wasn't a concert experience because, all of his gigs are like this very high energy kind of rave environment. And they kind of flipped the script and created this space where you had that ambient lighting, that very beautiful, like slow moving material. And people were invited to kind of just come into this space, maybe bring a journal or a drawing pad. And the whole intention of the session was that you could kind of just come into the space and be intentionally calm and intentionally quiet and just let these soothing sounds and sights wash over you and kind of just be in that space. And when I saw that video, I was just like, wow, like I want that, you know? Like
we should do more event like that. It would be amazing.
Yes, I think things are starting to shift, like we have this blueprint of social time as something that should be very stimulating and should be loud and centered on release and hedonism and drinking and all these things. And I mean, I'm sure that, we definitely have a time and a place for that. But I think with the way our culture is right now, we need these kind of intentional, restful experiences as kind of an antidote to that pace and that intensity.
We have a concept.
Yes.
that we're going to steal from Patagonia.
Yeah, who wants to fund our first chill session?
Yes, go fund me.
Yeah, call us.
Yeah, call us.
You know who we could learn a lot from about rest? Nature.
Oh, yes.
True.
True.
So I think we have this constant pressure to perform, to output, to work constantly. But if you think about how things really work in the natural world, it's seasonal and it's cyclical. And I mean, it plays out over the long term where you have the season of flowering and fruit and labor and harvest. And then you have the quiet, dormant season where everything intentionally goes underground. And that time is not seen as, lazy or off. That is essential time for nature to recover itself, to reset, to germinate, to grow those seeds.
And to bloom again.
To bloom again.
Oh my God, I love that parallel. We should get the lessons from Mother Nature. That's so, so true. I love that comparison.
Yeah.
We are like constantly wanting to optimize while it's not our natural state in a way.
So what would it look like if we started to rewrite the blueprint for rest?
We can say that rest can be seen as an intentional practice, an active practice, because we need to actively put rest times into our schedule and become aware of the benefits that they can bring us.
Something valuable, not something lazy or switched off.
Exactly. So doing all that without feeling the that we are not progressing or that we are not going where we want to be. Take time to integrate. Do we say integrate? What you are learning, of what you are accumulating, and digest it so you are able to bloom again.
Love it.
As nature would do. And yes, I think that could be a good start for the new blueprint for rest.
Yeah. I think one thing we also touched on is that there's almost these different flavors of rest or different kinds of rest, and it can be so powerful to understand which one you need in the moment and really cultivate that practice. So that can look like physical rest, it can look like social rest, creative rest, emotional rest. I think understanding that it's a multifaceted thing can really guide you to understand what is that type of rest that you need to practice.
Yeah. And also as a tool to get back with yourself, to yourself and your five senses, and to be present and embodied.
That sounds so nice.
So maybe we can end up with our beautiful tradition of the fortune cookie. Maybe
Let's see what she says.
Yeah, maybe you can tell us what the forecast is for today's cookie. It says, you will benefit from tonight's experience. So as we were saying,
that's perfect.
Yeah, just tonight we go to bed, we sleep,
give
we
it a rest.
Yeah, exactly, and we are going to benefit from it for sure. Even the fortune cookie says it.
And let us know how you rested. What does it look like for you?
And how you feel after it.
Yes.
Thank you guys for listening to As If We Know podcast.
You can subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, or follow As If We Know podcast on Instagram and TikTok.
See you next time.
Bye.